Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another week of Reddit League Season 5. We were in Russia this week, and that caused a bit of controversy for things. And if anything, we started the hard world map early because Russia definitely wasn't easy for those who did play. My name is Zotomo, and I'm joined as always by Calamity. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty nice. Yeah, it's very hot today, but other than that, I'm doing fine. And we have the pleasure of being joined by a fellow Division 4 member, Nakiro. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing good. Very happy to be here today.
Yeah, great to have you. And to get your insights in Division 4, I think we actually have a matchup coming up pretty soon. So we'll get to talk about that when we get to that one. But yeah, let's start off with Division 1 as always and with their match results. And the big thing here, Nakiro, was simply that Raidman was taking a automatic yellow, just refused to play against Boxa in this one.
Yeah, indeed. It sparks a bit of controversy. I didn't really follow, but I can understand his decision. So that doesn't really change anything in the rankings yet, considering Boxa was already far above. The seed was not the most difficult seed. I think it was actually the easiest out of the 5. I'm not completely sure. There was sign big toward big cities, and for Noble that was findable. But still, Orpheus and especially Orpheus and Boxa still managed to get a very impressive score. Just 10 points drop for Orpheus. Unfortunately for Calamity,
Mm.
who dropped who still a very strong performance, but wasn't enough to beat Orpheus, unfortunately. Good showing from Burgu as well. He only choked the first round and almost 5k all the other. And unfortunately for Widok, who didn't seem to really like Russia that much, he got actually 3 rounds pretty right, but got only 1 point in Sarkalin.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
a bit of a rough match for him that I hope he will soon forget. And yeah, and also a close match, and this is a win for Nimrif that we will see later. That change a bit, that make everything a bit closer in the ranking.
Yeah, Calamity with Raidman not playing Nimrif and Mr. Blue was probably the top of the table kind of matchup we were looking forward to in this one. And yeah, Nimrif coming out on top.
Yeah, very close game there between the two of them. As Nakiro said, it may have been the easiest seed. It's always a bit difficult for me to tell because I play the other division seeds before I start practicing, so it's hard to compare, but it may very well have been the easiest. And yeah, Nimrif coming out there with a win. Just about 400 points ahead of Mr. Blue. He'll be very happy about that. He needed those points if he wanted to still have a say in the fight for the playoff places. And I, of course, never lucky. I already had that with Burdock in week 4, where I had the 4th best score of the division and lost. And now I had the 3rd best score of the division and lost. Which is very annoying because those definitely would have been points that I would have absolutely needed. Because now it's going to be rough for me in the last 3 weeks. But yeah, I can't blame myself for anything there, really. I did what I could, and Orpheus was just better. I feel like going back to, saying it was the easiest seed, I think most of the rounds were fairly easy. The first round was relatively tricky. There wasn't much information there, although I did later on realize that there was a phone code there, which I just completely overlooked. And then the other one was potentially round 5, which was in sort of the outskirts of Novosibirsk, where going in one direction brought you all the information you would have needed after a while. So you still had to travel like 1.5, 2 minutes to get there. But going the other way pretty much got you absolutely nothing. So if you were unfortunate enough to go the wrong way and stick to that, or just stick to it for too long, then that would have been another round where you could have had trouble. I don't know why Burdock struggled with the round in Sakhalin, apparently, as Nakiro said, because that I don't think was too difficult of a round, but Yeah, Verdok, I think he mentioned that he just didn't really enjoy practicing it with the whole, political situation happening. So he just decided to not really continue practicing and just play the seed, and that might have something to do with it as well.
Yeah, lots of 24,000s or above is a very nice score for Russia. I think anybody would be happy on that, no matter the time you have. So something definitely be proud of from those people there. Into our table, and as you can see, Orpheus does get a little bit of a bump, mainly because Mr. Blue and Raidman dropping points. Nimrod, with his win against his kind of rival for those championship playoff spots, does move himself up to 5th, replacing Calamity. And pretty much at the bottom of the table, Verdok still struggling so he can maybe get out of that automatic spot, Nakiro.
Yeah, indeed, it's going to be tough for Weirdog. I would say, fortunately for him, baseman loss makes things a bit closer. Yeah, but overall, yeah. Since Redman didn't play and Mr. Blue lost, Nimrith win against Mr. Blue, it really made the table more close toward the end of the season. Yeah, and there's going to be a very interesting promotion fight for me for the 4th place between a player from ranking from 4th to maybe 7 to Pluki and 8 including Burgo, since there's only like 4-point gaps between all of them. So I'm really excited to see what's gonna end up. And especially, I think that Calamity has still to have to play Nimrith in the following week, or no, maybe the week after that.
Yeah, week 8.
Week 8, yeah. So yeah, it's shaping off very interestingly, I think, for the final stretch of the competition.
Yeah, Calamity. I think with Raidman not playing, Boxa has pretty much secured his top 4 position, 6 wins out of 6. It's really going to be a fight for probably about 5 or 6 of you to try to get those last couple places.
I actually think it looks a lot more open than it is, and I'm going to say that it pretty much will all depend on my game against Nimrith in Europe. Because if Nimrith wins that, then I think he still has a good chance to get one of those, free open places, I'm going to call it, because Box is pretty much safe. And if he doesn't win that, then I think the first 4 will stay the same way as they are right now, because I don't see Raidman dropping too many points, and Mr. Blue and Orpheus, if Nimrith doesn't win, they've already got 3 points to make up against those 2 in 2 other matches. I just don't see it happening. Of course, it could happen if they, do really badly, but they're not the types of players that usually would do badly in maps like a Hard World next week or Europe afterwards. I could see them maybe losing games in some places that they feel uncomfortable in, but I don't really see that in, as I said, a Hard World or Europe. I think the more interesting part is going to be the relegation fight, which, as I said, again, will depend on my game against Nimrith in 2 weeks. Because if he wins that, then it's everyone down there except for him. And if he loses that, then he's in that fight as well. But yeah, I also feel like 6th to 10th currently are the people who are still sort of playing against relegation. And a bit unfortunate for me to be there with the 3rd highest total score right now, but it is the way it is. And yeah, I probably think Verdok, just from what he's shown so far, he will be in the bottom 3 for sure. Whether it'll be in 10th in the automatic relegation spot or not is yet to be seen. But I do think it will probably be him and 2 other people, which, will have to be determined over the course of the next 3 weeks.
Indeed. Well, let's see how things start off. We are on a world map coming up next week in week 7. And these are our matchups for Division 1. Another top 4 battle, Raidman and Mr. Blue. Raidman obviously not going to miss another week in a row. But other than that, a nice French derby, Verdok and Orpheus for you, Nakiro.
Yeah, indeed. Considering that Verdok has always strong showing on the world map, I'm excited to see that one. And Orpheus also has a very strong season so far. So yeah, very interesting matchup indeed. I would say other than that, Pluki against Nimri is going to be interesting and very important for Nimri or Pluki as well, to see if they manage to secure at least to avoid a relegation fight. Yeah, and of course Redman against Mr. Blue, top clashes here, and yeah, very exciting to see this after Redman yellow card in Russia.
Yeah, Calamity, there's quite a few of those middle group matchups you talked about in 2 weeks, but this week we've got Pluki and Nimrif, UNM the Basement, and I'm actually really looking forward to UNM the Basement because this is a Division 2 rivalry that has been going on that continues into Division 1.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't comment on that because, well, me and Basement both have already played, so I know the outcome of it. So I'll,
No spoilers.
I'll stick to talking about the other games here, and it actually plays out relatively well for me, I guess, in the rest of the season. How you've got here Verdok against Orpheus and Bulgur against Boxer. You're maybe not looking at the highest chances of them scoring too many points. And some of them actually have like pretty difficult ends of the season as well. Like Bulgur then goes on to play Orpheus and then Basement, so they take points away from each other, hopefully. And Verdok then goes on to play Basement as well, so potentially taking points away there. And who else was it? Yeah, Pluki goes on to play Raidman and Mr. Blue. So there are some difficult matchups, but well, for me myself, it doesn't get much easier, as I already mentioned earlier. Play Nimrith the week after that, and then Raidman in Canada, which doesn't leave much hope to continue picking up many points. But yeah, Pluki Nimrith is definitely an interesting one. It is kind of at the stage for Nimrith where he has probably the easiest final matchups of anyone in the last 3 weeks, with Pluki followed by me and then Verdok in the last week. So he definitely still has a chance to get to top 4, but I think he needs to win all of those. So Pluki's not an easy game to start with, but it's about as easy as it can be in Division 1, where no games are really easy. And yeah, apart from that, Raidman against Mr. Blue is definitely, like, purely based on skill, the most interesting match to look at. Although I'm not sure Mr. Blue would feel the most confident on a hard wall specifically, because I feel like it doesn't really play to his strengths. But we'll see if he can surprise me there.
Yeah, it is a world map after all. So good luck to everybody in Division 1 on that. Moving to Division 2 and their matchups. And we have a second automatic yellow card with Real Clyde, I think also choosing not to play in this one. But yeah, this seed, obviously a lot rougher. Either that or people just didn't practice as much, Nakiro.
Yeah, indeed, it was not the easiest seed, but not the most difficult one either. There was actually 2 tricky ones, I would say, and one of which I personally didn't get any information. It was a Khabarovsk, near Khabarovsk, I think, and there was, I found a weird map, and but you could guess it was the Russian border, but that's all that I get. And there was also a run in Kaliningrad, and some people didn't get that, and I think that can explain a lot of the lower score here. I noticed, of course, the score of LCN. I don't really know what happened here. He actually played his seed in 43 seconds. So I don't know, he just played before the deadline or anything. And yeah, Shumi and Relat are getting a very impressive score here for considering the seed. Even though Shumi didn't really need that against LCN, and I think Max FI would be happy to take a bonus point here against Renata, considering the gap. Unfortunately for Guerrero, he lost his match for the third time in a row now. He still has to play Moist Faber on the following week. So he get still 3 points to get, and yeah, Barry was I think a bit happy to be against him, considering his not so strong a performance here.
Yeah, 2 of the 3 lowest scores in that matchup, and Barry walks away with it, Calamity.
Yeah, a bit lucky there, I suppose. Guelo just slightly off, would have needed to find maybe one more round, just get a little bit closer. So definitely unfortunate for him because that, definitely a score that you could beat. Funnily enough, I actually would even consider this may have been the easiest seed almost, at least out of the other, taking away the Division 1 seed, because obviously I practiced for that. But I got above 20k in this seed without any practice. And the one round I didn't get actually was neither of the ones Nakiro mentioned. I was around in the far south, sort of the southwest, but the eastern part of it, near Mahachkala, where I just didn't find any information. But I found pretty much everything else without any problems. So it's surprising to see so many people struggle with it. I would assume, actually, Clyde later on just told me he straight up forgot. I would more so assume LCN may be, just clicking through the seed because he didn't want to play Russia, but, didn't want to get a yellow card. That would be more so my assumption, because otherwise, just looking at the score, you could have, if you hadn't seen the specific times, you could have assumed maybe if he'd spent 3 minutes in round 1 and didn't get many points and then saw, okay, Shumi's already up there, maybe he just gave up. But no, he took 12 seconds in round 1 too, so that clearly wasn't it. Yeah, apart from that, Ice unfortunately continuing to lose. There were actually not one of the worst scores of the week, so if he had a different opponent, would have been possible to get some points there, but not against Polyboss there. And yeah, Renata and Max both getting decent scores. Of course, as Nakiro said, Shumi and Renata very impressive here as well. And Max is going to be, I guess, happy with a bonus point there. Just about as well, I think. Actually, let me... yeah, I think he's just about got the 6th highest score. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Might be the it's too early for me. I can't do it. It's close.
The automatic table tells us that he gets a point, and
Yes.
it doesn't look like anybody below him did. So
yeah, the problem is just
very
that I don't know if he's 5th or 6th, because Latom is below him, but he obviously won his game against the yellow card, so I don't know if he would have gotten a bonus point or not. But let's just ignore that whole part.
Yeah, right. But yeah, we'll look at that, what that means for the standings. With Barry's very nice kind of fortunate win, he stays in the top 2 with Snorlax, of course. Renata and Shumi on a bit of a form. Renata, besides her 1 week that she missed, has really been excelling this season, and that sees them move up and replace Max and Clyde in those promotion spots. And towards more the bottom of the table, LCN obviously not playing too seriously, drops down. And Ice is kind of just hit, maybe not rock bottom, but if I can make a pun, he's hit ice bottom. Definitely not, hasn't really gone anywhere. Kind of fell down there towards the bottom of the table and has been unable to pick himself back up so far. But this is Division 2. They've got a few more weeks to go, and then in the rest of the divisions, Nakiro.
Yeah, indeed, very rough for Ice Taro. It's gonna be hard to, even if we are only halfway of the season, as you mentioned, it's gonna be tough to climb out of that hole he dug himself in, I would say. And as you mentioned, Renata and Shumi benefiting from their very good performance this week and switching place with Maxify and Cameron. Apart from that, not a lot of changes. Well, still a bit, but bottom and top stays the same. Fortunately for Barry Fishy, as we say, not very high score, but still managed to win. So secure himself at the top there here. Le Temps won his match, so and he still has to play Flapper in the next week, so it's gonna be tough for the people at the bottom here, especially for Ice.
Yeah, Calamity is mentioning that we're into the second half of the season, and some of these scores do have that benefit of already going up against that red carded match. Some of them still have to come. So that could definitely shuffle things up a bit more in the coming weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at sort of the bottom of the table there, Ice already had that positive thing of having played against Moist Flubber. So his 3 points already include those, which puts him in a much worse position because, well, as we said, or as Nakiro said before, Guelo has that still to come in the second next week, and Latom also has it to come next week. So he would need to make up at least 6 points comparatively in the last, 5 weeks, which is possible, but given the current form and sort of the people he's still up against, like his next opponents are Shumi, Snorlax, and then Latombe and Guelo, maybe those two matchups, and then Barry to finish it off. So the matchups against Latombe and Guelo are pretty much must-win games for him if he wants to come out of that automatic relegation spot. Otherwise, I think he's probably secured there in 11th place. Or technically, if someone else gets a second yellow card, that's his other hope, I suppose. And then it's very interesting. Yeah, it's very close between 7th and 10th, especially if you consider, the red carded matchups, which go to Tom and Guelo still. Where I think that could be a very interesting fight to see who will end up in the two relegation playoff spots and who can just about get out there. I don't think either of them have a chance still, even though we're just past the halfway point to get into the promotion playoff spots. They would have to have some really good games, but then again, I also like out of the people at the top there, like Renata and Clyde already had a yellow card, so they should be higher than they are based on their skill, which doesn't, make me have too much hope for the others, considering there's still quite a few points behind them. And if they just don't get any more yellow cards, it should be amongst, sort of the current top 6 to fight for the 4 promotion spots.
Yeah, very nice. Well, let's look at their matchups on the world map. And yeah, we've been talking about Latemps does have his red card matchup against Moist Flubber on this one. Probably not where he would have wanted it. Besides that, just kind of a really mixed bag here. Top of the table taking on sort of lower or mid-table Snorlax, LCN, Barry, and Max towards the top, but Max still kind of in that lower group. Ice and Shumi and Renata and Orbucka there, Nakiro.
Yes, indeed. I think the IS match here is Barry against Maxify, sorry, 2 versus 5. But also, yeah, I think Renata Polyboss is very interesting because Renata is quite new. I don't really know what she's capable to do in a hard world map. So I'm interested to see that. I would say also it's this match is a must-win for Clyde. For Clyde, if he wants to keep his chance of promotion intact, and it's not going to be easier for Ice as well. He's going up against Shumi on a hard one map and a map that include his own country, Nigeria. So I don't think it's going to be very easy for him again this week.
Calamity, any matchups you're looking forward to in these?
Yeah, most of them look relatively set to start with. Probably the closest is Barry against Max, which I could see being very interesting fights. There's an interesting point where we probably haven't seen any of the newcomers on a difficult world map yet. So we don't necessarily know what to expect of them because Volvo dealerships clearly wasn't a difficult world map. Now we're actually seeing them for the first time in properly difficult countries that they won't necessarily be able to practice for. I mean, you could just sit down and practice all of the 24 countries that are going to be in this map, but it's probably too big of a task to really get better at all of them. You can maybe sit down and look at, maybe I've got a specific weakness in this country that I can maybe fix in that 1 week, maybe in a couple of days, just practicing, but you can then just end up not getting the country in your seed. It's not very likely to get a specific country you want, considering you only get 5 rounds out of 24 countries, and maybe you even get 2 rounds in the same country. So considering that, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how the newcomers do, not only in this division, but across all divisions. Other than that, most of the matchups, as I said, relatively top against bottom. Maybe Ice actually has, I would have said, a relatively decent chance on a hard world compared to something that requires too much practice. But Shumi again is probably not really the opponent that he would have wanted for that game. And yeah, Guelo Clyde is actually another one that I think could be interesting, even though Guelo's current position in the table doesn't look too good. I know that he's capable of better, and I think that could be a close game as well against Clyde.
Nice. Well, moving on then to Division 3 and their results in Russia. No yellow cards in this one, but plenty of low scores. Actually, nobody getting over that 20,000 point mark, and quite a few of them around that even 10,000 point mark. So not a good day for quite a few people, Nakiro.
Yes, indeed. But yeah, it was probably the hardest seed with D4, really. And it can be explained by a seed where there was, unfortunately, a bit of a broken coverage that was not immediately noticeable while you go north on a road and reach a bigger one, but both sides were dead end. So it was purely landscape guessing on that run, and you could see on the nobody got higher than 4,100 points, and I think it was Armand who did it on that run. But also there was also very other difficult round. I think your location that was also a bit difficult to get, so that can explain some of the lower score here. Overall, yeah, I think Hugo will be happy to be against Faraban this week, considering his low score, and to pick up that it happens on Russia. Again, so yeah, what the fuck are you talking in Seppo? And Pastek, who managed, even though he lost, managed to get a bonus point to keep him a bit afloat, I would say, and away from still up to fight for out of the relegation zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think Hugo took his match all that seriously against Firebon in that red card match, Calamity. And definitely WTF was the one who escaped with a win in this one. That would not have been enough for a bonus point, I think, if he had not had won his matchup.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been, although it wasn't, with 2 red cards and 3 players, Seppo closed and Hugo being below him, it actually would have been close. I think he would have just needed one more person, such as Pastek, for example, to be below him to get that bonus point. But yeah, he'll certainly be happy. It was definitely a must-win game against Seppo, and I suppose a bit it shows how you shouldn't give up on a game, especially when it's a difficult seed. Like there were a few players in this that just had bad first 1, 2, 3 rounds and then just kind of gave up on the last 2. Like Seppo took like 3.5 minutes for round 1, then 3:49, and then 2 minutes, 30 seconds, and 2 minutes for the last 2 rounds. But if he had taken those last 3 rounds seriously, where he got like a combined, 4,000 points, and could have maybe gotten, instead of 4,000, 9,000 points, which isn't that unreasonable. I mean, the one round he spent 30 seconds on, he may well have found something else if he just spent longer and may have been able to figure that round out. He would have suddenly just won, just because, WTF didn't get such a great score either. And it just shows that you should never throw rounds away for no reason. Like you can still be a bit annoyed at your first 3 rounds or whatever, but just still finish the seed seriously. You never know what it's good enough for. Unless you see like after 4 rounds your opponent is at 20k and you're like 7k, and probably not a bonus point, maybe. But other than that, you should always finish your seed seriously. And yeah, there was that round Nakiro mentioned. Actually, if you don't restrict it to the Division 3 players, it was actually Trebliha who got the highest score in that round with 4,300 points. So still not anywhere near pinpointing, but it showed that, you had quite a few people who got the right area at least. And there was definitely, it was cut off in a couple of places. There was enough coverage to go around and formulate like a good opinion on which region of Russia you're in. So you could at least like get, those about 4,000 points relatively I don't want to say easily because it was still a hard round, but you could get them relatively consistently if you've practiced enough and have done your your job at learning landscapes. Other than that, you're probably the biggest. I mean, I don't want to say disappointment or anything, but the biggest loss, I guess, in this one is closed with just 9,000 points, losing against Freckles, the one with the biggest implications in the table, I suppose. Um, and yeah, Steal the Snick as well with a nice win against Paulinho.
Nice. Well, yeah, looking at those standings, definitely closed, dropping down into 8th place there. He is at one point was in that top 4, so it's been quite the little fall. Pashtek and Seppo, despite their tries, not able to move out of the bottom. And yeah, the top 4 all staying the same. So really the midfield shuffling in this one. Yeah, 2 Frenchmen at the top, Nakiro. Not
Yes,
bad.
indeed, yeah. We can say the same for all the divisions. And very strong showing from them. And we're only halfway through the season, but yeah, no loss and very impressive performance from both of them. Other than that, very not that much of a movement, but it's hard to predict considering the 2 red card players. I think it's still very, as I was saying earlier, for Pastek, he get a bonus point that put him like 3 points behind the 2 people above him. So yeah, I think he would be very happy with that. It's looking a bit grim for Seppo, but it's gonna be hard to climb out. But fortunately, with the 2 red carded player, he's still he's not very in danger right now.
Yeah, exactly, Clement. It's still pretty close towards the bottom of the table, as well as the top. The midfield, though, is kind of being left adrift for better or for worse. And
yeah, not too much to play for in some of those positions. I actually had a quick look right now to see who still had the red matchups to come up. And the only players who are done essentially with those games are Amon, Hugo, and Pastek. Those 3 have gone through all of their red carded matchups. They won't get any more free points. And the only one who's still got both of them to come is Paulinho in 7th. And he also still has a game against Hugo and against WTF. And there's going to be one more. Let me just quickly make sure. And against Closed, yes. So quite a few games that are around his position in the table, plus those 2 free wins, to me means that, at least from like 7th down, he's kind of the only one I still see with a chance to really make that jump into the top 4. I think for Pastek and Seppo, obviously, but for Closed as well, he's in a very difficult position now if he wants to fight for top 4. I mean, he could still, of course, if you win every game, you're right in there, but very difficult position for him. So Paulinho, I think, the most likely to make that jump. But yeah, looking at the top, Amor, even if he's already had his red carded games, he looks like the favorite to get promoted. And behind that, it's relatively close. Bubat has been pretty solid so far. WTF has been solid. Freckles, again, with that yellow card last week. If he just wouldn't get those every time, then he probably would be back in Division 2 by now. But yeah, it is how it is.
yeah, not to mention Hugo also has taken a yellow card. So those 2 definitely would have been in a much better position without those. So yeah, lots of good advice in this one. Keep playing even in tough games, and just play a little bit even, so you don't get yellow carded and drop some points you could definitely have picked up. Well, moving on to their matchups in a world map, it is Seppo and Paulinho to have some red card matches in this one. They might be pretty happy about that. Hard world is not easy, of course. Other than that, though, a top of the table matchup, Armand and Bobot there, a French derby as well. Nakiro.
Yes, indeed, the top clash. And I would say that every matchup is very interesting this week on Division 3. You got also WTF against Denfrickle, 3 against 4. Pastek against Hugo is very interesting for the relegation fight as well. And even still versus Close, the mid-table matchup. And personally, against players that, I'm curious to see what they're gonna do on the hard world map this week. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, Calamity, any of those matches in particular you are looking forward to seeing?
As Nakiro said, they're all kind of interesting in a way. Probably like the least interesting match, and that already says a ton, is Steal the Snick against Closed, because that in of itself is already still kind of interesting. It's just they're both in a position where they're probably gonna end up somewhere in the midfield. So while it could still be like a close match, it probably doesn't have the biggest implications to it. But WTF against Freckles is a very interesting game for the sort of promotion fights. They're very close together in the table. And whoever wins that game is definitely going to be in a much better position. But of course, still nothing decided even after that, because we still have another 4 rounds after that. But very interesting and important match, that one. And of course, Bubat against Amon. If Amon manages to win that, he would be at least like 4 points or so, I think, ahead of second place at that point. And that would almost guarantee him his automatic promotion. There's still, as I said, 4 weeks to go. But with how he's played so far this season, I just don't see him dropping too many points after that. And yeah, Pastek against Hugo, very interesting as well, of course, because this is kind of Pastek's last chance to avoid that relegation playoff game. So to sort of be in a comfortable position where he can still avoid it. If he loses that game, he'll be in a position where it's still possible, but he'll then come up against Amon next week, and he'll still have to play against Freckles, and he'll still have to play against Steal the Snick. So there's, the chances of picking up points are going down and down, and this would be a game that where it's still possible. And yeah, on the other side for Hugo as well, if he still wants to fight for promotion potentially, which he surely would not have expected to be in the fight for come the start of the season, but at this stage it's still a possible thing for him to accomplish that. But in that case, a win against Pastek would have to be a must.
Very nice. Well, moving on to Division 4 and 5 and back to those divisions that have less players, which means they have less time to make things happen, and how they did in Russia. We'll start off with 4A and their results. And yeah, another tough seed, of course, but these scores really over the place. We see something like Soviet Spy in 24,674, but also people like Dromi, a fellow Frenchman there, 9,344, Nakiro.
Yes, indeed. Scores spread all across the board, and a very impressive performance from Soviet Spy here. I was very impressed when I saw his score on that seed. I don't know how he managed to get such a very good score. And it was also a very important win for him too. Yeah, other than that, yeah, pretty hard seed. For me, it resulted in mostly 2 landscape guesses without a lot of clues around the area like Ufa, etc. Like, the UR mountains. Unless as Orpheus told me, there was one of the one where you have the flag of the oblast display as with the city name. I didn't know, of course, but Orpheus did, and he told me, and that's how he got the point. So unless your oblast flag, it was a very clueless round. So yeah, impressive performance for Soviet, but unfortunately for Flipstar, who is second best here. I think also Exalt would be happy with his wins. He told me that he couldn't train this week. He only had 2 days. So he was very surprised when he came back to see that he won against Romy. And yeah, overall, yeah, no, I would say pretty good performance from a lot of people, apart from Wakelok and Dromi, I would say.
Yeah, this seed definitely seemed to test a lot of people, but yeah, unfortunate for Flipster and Soviet, they had to go up against each other. And Flipster, second best score, not enough, only enough for a bonus point even.
Yeah, that is quite unfortunate, especially because they essentially had the best and second best score on the whole seed, even including, the other Division 4, everyone else that played that seed. And to still only come away with 1 point there for Flipster is going to be very disappointing. But yeah, fantastic game there by Soviets. Apart from that, yeah, you mentioned it, Hexalt, not the greatest score, but still enough to beat Dromi, so definitely important 3 points for him. Lunacy, unfortunately, I say unfortunately, I mean, I'm of course neutral as a commentator, but unfortunately for him, he lost that game against Mick Pete. And he might very well here also have been very close to the bonus point. There were 4 players with a score worse than him, so he's just 1 player away from getting that 5th place essentially. And yeah, just that was about 800 points to Bastetli, who just about, was in those top 5, but won his game anyway, so he wouldn't have needed the points. So just taking that one away from Lunacy for no reason. Yeah, there was actually something funny. Bastetli and Boxer talked about Pastetli said, hey, like he's got to play against Wakelok this week and he's got to practice. And Boxer was like, Wakelok in Russia, that sounds like a 10K game. And yeah, he was right. But yeah, apart from that, Solo Sensei with a pretty important win there against Sepkirst as well. I feel like that was a game that very much decided kind of both of their season's headings, because they were pretty close in the table, and that sort of put a pretty big gap between the two, which put Solo Sensei in the promotion fight and Sepkirst further down the table.
Yeah, so let's look at that and how that played out. And yeah, quite a bit of shuffling around here. The 2 Americans, though, Solar Sensei and Lunacy, not moving in the 3rd and 4th position. Hexalt does take Flipster's spot by moving up into 1st. Yeah, Soviet with his nice performance there sees his chances of staying in the division at least bump up a little bit, moving him up into 5th. And yeah, Pastetli finally out of that relegation spot into 7th. Yeah, and Wakelock down there with as well as Dromi and Sepkirist, as you mentioned, Calamity. A bit of a struggle towards that bottom, and a little bit of a gap is starting to build between those lower 3 or 4 players here, Nakiro.
Yes, indeed, a very rough season for Wakelok. I don't see him manage to climb that up, honestly. Other than that, yeah, Exalt, very happy with 1st place, I guess, considering the score of the other opponent here. Soviet win give him some air. He was 7 last week, and so yeah, now he's mid-table, and it's gonna be hard to reach promotion playoff considering there are only 3 weeks left. Still theoretically possible, but highly unlikely. The only one who can still opt for promotion, I would say, other than the top 3, of course, is Lunacy, but he's really gonna need a bonus point considering his total score here against Solar Sensei. And yeah, other than that, Mick Piet, even with his win, he doesn't move an inch in the ranking here.
Yeah, Calamity, I think Nakiro has a good point there that, with the 2-point gap, that it's only a couple weeks left. That can be very hard to make up, even if mathematically it looks like it's very simple.
Yeah, 2 points, I would say, is still sort of in a range where it's, with 3 weeks to go, that's doable. 3 points, I think, is where it starts to get tricky, because with the 2 points still, if you get a bonus, like your opponent gets a bonus point, then you just move up. Even if you win, you move up to the same amount of point, and it comes down to the tiebreaker. Mm-hmm. But with 3 points, if your opponent picks up a bonus point, like even a win on your part doesn't get you anything. So you really want to at least narrow that gap down to something less than 3 points before the last week. I mean, ideally, you'd want to, move past them and secure yourself whatever you want, but, can't always get what you want. And so, yeah, I think probably looking at this table right now, I think, yeah, Lunacy's still possible. It's still possible for him to, move up into those first 3 spots. He still has Pastetli and Sepkirst, who are pretty far below him in the table to play against, which could be some not easy points, but easier points. Then week 8, he has to play against Flipster, which is also going to be an interesting game for sure, especially in Europe, which he might have a slight disadvantage on. But a win there would be very crucial to almost secure a position in the top three, because I feel like if he would win all three remaining games, then he's in there, in my opinion. I guess the one advantage that he does have is that the top three is still very close together. So it's not like he just has to make up 3 points to one of them in specific. In particular, he has to make up 3 points to any of them, and that is still more possible than it would be otherwise. And down there at the bottom, yeah, Wakelock, I mean, he needs to he needs to pull out more games like the perfect score he had once this season, if he wants to have any chance. Still doable. Like, it is actually funny to look at that he essentially had one game this season where he played very well, and it's still possible for him to not get relegated. He just needs to have one more, and maybe another perfect score and a win. Maybe 8 points is enough to at least make it to the relegation playoff. It could be doable.
Very nice. Well, let's look at their coming up matches in a world map. And I would say that for the most part, we've got a lot of kind of, upper table versus lower table. There's a little bit mixed in there. Flips are taking a Wakelock. Obviously, doesn't make it any easier for Wakelock to try to turn things around. And Hexalt taking on Solar Sensei is the top of the table, probably the most interesting one that I can pick out of nowhere. But definitely, equally important mid-table with Serpcurist and Soviet Spy could decide quite a bit. But for you, Nakiro, I would point out the nice little French derby again, Dromi and McBeat.
Yeah, and it's even funny, but that Dromi and McBeat know each other because they are in the same team in the league, if I'm not mistaken. And so yeah, it's very interesting for them, I suppose. Other than that, as you mentioned, very high versus lower half of the table matchup. Solar Sensei and Exile probably we're going to be the closest one here. Unfortunately for Wakelock, against Flipster, it's not going to get easier, and he desperately need some points. But it's gonna be tough on a hard world. I don't know if he's got really strong showing on world map before on previous season, but our world is not a typical world map, and if you don't really know your country, those country well, it's good. You're in for a rough time, I would say. Other than that, maybe Pastitli versus Lunacy gonna be interesting. City definitely needs some points to secure at least to be safe from relegation here. So I'm looking forward to see those match.
Oh yeah, Calamity.
Yeah, I don't think Dromi and McPeat are actually in the same team. They might have been at one point. I don't know about that, but I think currently they aren't. At least judging by their the clan tags or whatever that they've got in their names. And it's definitely an interesting matchup though, sort of fighting against relegation. McPeat probably in a bit of a better position right now, but for Dromi that could be important points if he could get any there. Of course, Hexalt against Solar Sensei is the top of the table match. That's going to be the most interesting there for sure. Where getting a win out of this one, I think almost guarantees you to end up in the top three. But obviously, in a division as or in playoffs as rough as the promotion playoffs in Division 4 and 5 are, you kind of want the automatic spots. Otherwise, you're going to be in for rough playoffs, but still possible to go through those. Of course, one of them has to make it through. Sepkist against Soviet is also very interesting. Soviet, of course, with a fantastic performance just this week in Russia, but going back to world map, maybe back to his usual form, which is very hit or miss. He might benefit a bit from the fact that it's a hard world and not a normal world map. So I think he's a bit better as on a map where it's not necessarily apparent immediately which area of the world specifically you're in. And when I say that, I mean down to okay, I'm looking at this, it's probably this part of this country. Where in a hard world, sometimes it takes you a minute or two to even figure out the country you're in, just because you're in the middle of a forest somewhere in the middle of nowhere on a dirt road. and that might play into his hands a little bit. Other than that, yeah, Wakelock, of course, rough game for him against Flipster. Don't see too big of a chance there. And Lunacy against Pastetli could also be pretty interesting for sure. Lunacy, of course, the slight favorite, but Pastetli, similarly to Soviet, I think, in that might benefit a bit from the map we're playing.
Yeah, I don't know why I said that Dromi was in same team with Piet. It's absolutely not the case. I just checked. I don't know.
I think they might at one point have been. That might have just stuck in your mind. Well, moving over to Division 4B and their results in Russia. And yeah, quite a big bag of results. This side of the table, though, definitely doing a little bit worse than 4A for sure, Nakiro.
Yes, indeed. I don't really know why. For me, at least, I know that I got 4 good rounds, and I completely screwed up the last one in Novosibirsk. No, that was I put myself in Novosibirsk, and that was in the completely opposite direction. And I don't really know what happened here. Other than that, yeah, Diesel and Cap top of the table clash, and very close actually. End up with Diesel winning with just a few hundred points. Cap will surely be a bit disappointed, I guess, even if you get a bonus point for that. Other than that, Trebly, I will surely be happy to pick up a win against Sedikmi, who hasn't the strongest performance this week, and he's a bit. I think he's a bit demotivated since he got a really good first 2 weeks, and then it's not the country that is a favorite country, I would say. Like in the following week. Other than that, nice win from you, Zotomo, against Jake, who didn't have a strongest week either. So I'm sure you'll be happy to pick up those precious 3 points here.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was definitely the one who was lucky in this one, Calamity. I probably would not have picked up a bonus point if I had lost, but fortunately, it was enough for a win.
Yeah, you mentioned as well at the start how the scores here looked a bit weaker, and I don't think they actually are. Like if you looked at the average scores, I think they'd probably be pretty close. It just looks weaker because the specific like standout scores of the other division were just more apparent, because there's like a big difference between seeing like a 2 at the start of the score. But they also, this division didn't have, so many weak scores, like Division 4A had, like with Wakelock and Dromi had lower scores than anyone in Division 4B. So yeah, I just looked at it. The average is still higher in Division 4A, yes, but I don't think it was, an unusually big difference between the two divisions there.
So everybody closer together.
Yeah,
perhaps.
definitely.
Yeah.
And yeah, your win against Jake's definitely very important for yourself in the fight against relegation. I think Jake just has a bit of a problem with, I'm gonna say, mental resilience. Where the whole thing with the movement bug, I think, got into his head a bit, and he was already not in like a good place mentally starting the seed, and then that's just what happens in a country like Russia. You're just not going to do very well with that, and I feel like that's probably the one thing he would have to work on most. Like not even his Geoguessr skills, just mentally being in the right place to be like, okay, whatever happens, I'm just going to play my best every round. And if there's a shit round in there, and so be it, I'm going to start fresh into the next round, which is difficult to do, but I think that's where he's struggling the most. Nakiro, I think, just about getting the bonus point there. I think is just in fifth place there. But yeah, just about good enough. Treblia didn't need the bonus point anyway, so that's good that happened out. It happened to pan out that way. But for her as well, very important win there against Hedikmi. If she had lost that game, then it would probably have put her in last place with quite a bit of a gap to the people ahead of her. So that at least keeps it close. But kind of again, I think wasn't it the same last time around for you as well, Zotomo, where you said you won, but everyone else down there won as well. And it's
Yep,
kind of
exactly.
the same here as well. Triblia won her game. Pork Steaks won against Teyemine. So it's kind of similar again. Laban won against Nakiro. So you're not making up too much ground there. But yeah, Diesel and Carp at least kind of, you know, stood up is not the right expression, but they
maybe lived up to expectations.
yeah, exactly. They lived up to expectations. They got the best 2 scores of their division, and Diesel winning it puts him, of course, in a fantastic position. Fighting for the automatic promotion spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so take a look at the standings. You can definitely tell that everybody kind of moved up together at the bottom here, despite that. So yeah, Diesel and Carp, they'll keep their top 2 spaces, but yeah, their gap is pretty big. Yeah, it's like 5 points with only about 3 weeks left to go. Pretty much secures that spot. There could be a little bit of movement between them, but I doubt we would see that. At the midfield, though, pretty tight. 13 points for you, Nakiro, but then quite a few people all the way down to me in 8th on 8. So that's only 5 points off. It's over that 3-point gap Calamity was talking about earlier, but definitely a lot to fight for, and especially considering the fact that Trebihop in last is on 6. So only 3 points separating 5th from dead last here.
Yeah, the win from you and other like Laban or Boysted did make things very tight, as you can see here. But also, yeah, you have to keep in mind that there's only 3 weeks left, so it's gonna be difficult for someone like Borstek or Jakes to even reach the 3rd playoff spot. Mostly, I think it's gonna be a fight between me and Eryemini here. I'm also quite happy that Eryemini lost his game as well. Because other than that, I think it will be very difficult for me to keep that promotion spot safe. Yeah, other than that, yeah, very interesting last week, yeah, because everything is close, as you mentioned, like Trebly, picking up a win makes things very interesting at the bottom as well. And yeah, I would say it's going to be very difficult for you, considering you got the same amount of points with 3 other players. So yeah, good luck in the next following weeks.
Yeah, Calamity, yeah, very tight there towards that middle and bottom of the table. But yeah, the top players definitely showing their worth, kind of running away with it.
Yeah, definitely. And as you mentioned, Diesel Carp's pretty much secured in 1-2. It's just a matter of can either of them, get any movement in those last 3 weeks. Of course, Diesel wouldn't want so, but Carp still looking at that first place. It's still possible. The last few weeks for either of them, I think, aren't particularly easy. Diesel definitely has the easier finish, though, so not looking too hopeful for Carp there. It's actually a pretty difficult position for Jake to be in, because he definitely went into this season with the expectation of, if not getting promoted, then at least fighting for promotion. And right now he's currently 2 points away from last, essentially, and his last 3 games are against Carp, Nakiro, and Heyemine. So he's playing 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the last 3 weeks. So he has to actually watch out to not get relegated here, which is definitely not something we would have expected to see at the start of the season.
You mentioned that he would probably try to be fighting for promotion, but because I beat him in Russia, I was like, I was really surprised by that, and especially how big our score difference was. That I watched his video on Russia, and he said, this season I'll be happy if I don't get relegated because I have no time to practice at all. And so I was like, oh, that's maybe what happened. So I think he definitely has that skill, but he's got to put in at least a couple practice games to really hit his stride. And he's just not really able to do that. So we're seeing a lot of up and down from him, I think, because of that. Just that amount of practice time he doesn't have, I think.
Yeah, so. I do think if he can just get within the top 50%, so it doesn't even matter too much about his opponents in the last 3 weeks. If he gets into the top 50% every time, or at least 2 times, I think that might already be enough to get him in a good position. And I think he should be fine, even if he has to go through the relegation playoffs. That shouldn't be a problem for him, because there's only one person getting relegated. So he should be able to at least beat one of his opponents there. So as long as he doesn't finish 10th, I think he's fine. But still, it's probably hard to accept mentally to kind of go from that, maybe I'll fight for promotion, to let's just, and not only to accept that, but to still bring a performance up to that standard that you would have maybe expected from the start of the season. But yeah, it's actually insanely close to the bottom. It's not even the bottom half. It goes up to pork steaks. Just 2 points separating everyone there is going to make for a super interesting finish to the season, at least in regards to the bottom of fighting against relegation. Whereas at the top of the table, I'm expecting Diesel to end up first. I'm expecting Carp to end up second. Then it's just Nakiro against Heimine for that third spot. But even that third spot might not even be too useful, because looking at the other side of Division 4, where it's currently Flipstone, Solar Sensei, and Carp as well in the promotion playoff, that looks like an incredibly tough promotion playoff to go through.
Definitely. Yeah, if I could say anything about just that mental game, like I stopped recording my matches, unfortunately, just because it was causing a lot of mental stress of just being on, even though I wasn't on camera, it was still like, this could be seen by people. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to play these games a little bit more relaxed, turn on some tunes, sit back and just play them. And so far, I've gotten 2 wins out of 2. So I haven't been, I'm pretty happy about that. We'll see if that can continue as we jump into our matches for this 4B group. And yeah, Nakiro, the big talking point, simply for the fact that we're both here, you versus me on a hard world. But definitely, yeah, Jake's up against Carp there. Maybe not the next match he would have wanted after his performance in Russia.
Yes, indeed. I'm looking forward to play. I don't know if you already play your seed yet, but me, it's not the case for me. I don't know how you feel in Honor our world either. In sum up, I feel pretty. I wouldn't say confident, but pretty at ease. I kind of like some of the countries that are there, even though that's not the case for a lot of people. So yeah, pretty confident. I'm looking forward to play my seed and to see your score if you already play. And other than that, as you mentioned, Jake's against Carp, not gonna get easier for Jake's here, but also a lot of interesting matchup considering how tight things are. I'm thinking like Trabelia against Pork Steaks or Edikmi against Laban would be very interesting to watch, I think.
Yeah, Calamity, definitely those kind of lower table matchups in this part are definitely more interesting to watch, because Diesel and Carp have kind of walked away with those promotion spots. So it's pretty much the rest of the field that we're really looking for and seeing those results come out.
Yeah, for sure. And we've got 2 of those right here with Pork Steaks, Trebliha, and Hedikmi against Laban. Which, yeah, very important games for all 4 of them, where just a win here would be fantastic, because that essentially puts you at least 3 points ahead of where you were last week, if that makes sense. So you're in a much better position, because you've also taken points away from one of your direct competitors. And I do feel like those are both pretty even matches, I'm going to say, where anything could really happen. A lot of players where you're not really sure what you're going to get out of on any given map. Apart from that, I definitely think Carp against Jake is, like, skill-wise the most interesting game here. Although I think Hajimine against Diesel could also be pretty interesting. Then, yeah, of course, your game between each other could be a very interesting one as well. For Nakiro, it's kind of like it's actually might not be a must-win if you look at Hajimine having to play against Diesel, but it could give you a pretty big advantage against Hajimine if you win that against Zotomo. And so for Zotomo, of course, the other way around, a win there, would be crucial in the fight against relegation. You actually do have, again, never easy games, but a relatively easy finish to the season than Hedikmi and Pork Steaks in the last 2 weeks. So just more fights against direct relegation opponents, which are also going to be very important.
Yeah, I've already played Carp and Diesel, and now after this week, I already have played Nakiro as well. So a lot of those players are out of the way. A little bit more chance to relax on that. Moving over then to Division 5 and their matchups, Division 5A, and a pretty good spread of scores here again. Some very low scores from, unfortunately, the likes of Clemens and Vincenzo. Probably would not have wanted to see this one, but some pretty nice scores, especially by Artificial there. 20,000, Nakiro.
Yes, indeed, very impressive considering that the seed was also quite difficult. There was some interesting location, like one by a lake that apparently some people 5k it. I couldn't find it at all. I think I got like less than 1,000 points or so on that round. Rough seed for Clemens and Vincenzo. Very, very tough. And especially for Vincenzo, who seems to really struggle because in the first 3 rounds, he got just a couple of hundred of points. And he then guessed only in the 18th second in round 4. So I think he got a bit frustrated with his performance. And that's something that also happened, I think, in Australia, where he struggled a lot. And also for Bombadil, unfortunately, who kind of close match really, and he desperately needed a win here. And yeah, as you mentioned, a very good, very strong performance from Artificial here. So he would surely be happy about that, I guess.
Yeah, Calamity.
Yeah, Bombadil kind of reminds me a bit of me this season. This is the 3rd time in 6 rounds where he's come 6th, the 6th highest score, and the 3rd time he's missed out on a bonus point. Just no luck whatsoever coming his way this season. So very unfortunate there. Other than that, Xander's definitely going to be happy about a win out of that relatively weak performance. Needed that to stay in the promotion fight. That could have very easily been a loss, but Clemens not getting to any kind of points in Russia, it seems. Apart from that, yeah, Artificial winning a pretty high level game, I suppose, compared to the other scores against Yamabi, who at least picks up 1 bonus point for it. And then probably the most, I'm going to say, important in terms of like 2 players playing against each other close in the table is Cephalin winning his game against Soundbite, which still keeps him in the fight for promotion as well, somewhat.
Very nice. Looking at their standings in Division 5A, and yeah, nobody at the top or the bottom move around. I think last week nobody moved at all. So despite all the happenings going on in this group, everybody's moving equally up or down. And this one, yeah, and as you mentioned, Soundbite, unfortunately, the one at the suffering, dropping down into 7th, and Penguin moving up into 5th. But other than that, absolutely no movement at all. The 2 Americans at the top, a pretty good lead going in this one, but still within that 3-point gap, all the way down into 4th. And it is quite a big climb out of those relegation spots for the likes of Bombadil and Vincenzo. Nakiro.
Yes, indeed. Yamabi, I think, picking up a bonus point and a big win makes things difficult for the like of Vincenzo. Vincenzo is pretty bad, even Bombadil, unfortunately. And also for Clemens, who got a lower total score, so he really needs that win and a bonus point now to get out of that direct relegation spot. Other than that, not a lot of movement. And even though, as you mentioned, it seems pretty open at the top on the paper, but the fruit of player have been pretty solid this season. And as you can see by their total score as well. So I'm not seeing things for now moving up that much. Maybe Sethelin could shuffle things around, but he still have, interestingly enough, he has to play against the next top 3 in the final 3 weeks. So it's not going to be easy for him for sure coming down to the end of the season.
Yeah, Calamity, Artificial, and Xander pretty much 1-2 here. Not maybe a lot of chance for those switch ups, especially given their matches coming up rather. But yeah, for your countrymen, Clemens, we don't have many of those we get to talk about. Lots of Frenchmen in this, but not too many other Austrians. Maybe not the season Clemens would have wanted coming into this as his first season in Reddit League.
Yeah, it's not his first season; it's his second season. But
Oh, that's right.
yeah, not the best season so far for him. Still in a position where it's possible maybe to get out of those automatic relegation spots. But looking at his games, he's got Oli Artificial ahead of him. Then does have Vincenzo in the last week, but I think he needs to pick up points before that game if he still wants to have a chance to move out of the bottom three. Even if it's just as little as maybe 1 or 2 points, that still keeps the chance alive. But if he picks up no points in the next 2 weeks, I think it's probably not going to be possible anymore. And yeah, as I mentioned, Bombadil, very unfortunate. He's also got now Artificial still to go next week. And then against Vincenzo and Yamabe, possible to pick up some points, but he's already 6 points behind. So he'd need to have some outstanding games. Essentially, he'd need to win all three and ideally maybe even get a perfect score in one of them. And that's just not looking very likely. For Vincenzo, I think it's over at this point. The gap is just too big. The form has been too poor. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, the top, it's still pretty close, actually, even if the total score difference are actually quite apparent. So purely performance-wise, there are bigger gaps in the players than I think the table shows currently. But yeah, it's still very close. And we could see a couple of movements there come the last weeks, but a lot of them still play each other for sure. Cephalin, having to play against all three of them, I mean, it's the ideal chance to take points away from them, but
exactly,
yeah, good luck.
Yeah, a bit of a dream and a nightmare all rolled into one. So let's take a look at some of those upcoming fixtures in week 7 on the world map. Yeah, Bombadil taking on Artificial there. Yeah, again, towards the bottom of the top. Clemens and Ollie again, bottom of the top. And yeah, there's our matchup, though. Really looking forward to, and we'll start to determine quite a bit in this playoff picture. Sethlin versus Sander, Nakiro.
Yes, indeed, 4-2, and I think it could potentially we could potentially see an upset here. Xander did score lower on Russia last week, and well, Russia is part of the of hardware, so maybe with a very Russian seed, who knows? But yeah, I think it could be interesting to follow, and there's potential for upset here. Other than that, yeah, as you mentioned, Clemens versus Oli. Clemens, we need every point he could get at this point. And yeah, Vincenzo against Yamabe. I don't know if it's Vincenzo would. I think it's not the ideal map for Vincenzo as well, considering his struggle on hard countries. Yeah, it's as Calamity mentioned earlier. Yeah, it's pretty much done, but maybe can end this season. Well, who knows?
Yeah, Calamity.
Yeah, most of the games, as you mentioned, are relatively one-sided. Cephalin against Xander is one-sided on paper as well. But yeah, as Nakiro said, Cephalin had a better score than Xander in Russia last week. So you never know. Maybe just the stars align and he does actually pull out a win there. I think for him, it's the important part in a fight for promotion would be at least to pick up a point. If he can pick up a point, there's not too much lost yet. It's just losing without any points would be probably the end of his chances. Soundbite against Penguins, actually another pretty interesting matchup, just in the fight against relegations. They're currently in 5th and 7th, respectively, just 1 point apart from each other. And with Yamabe playing against Vincenzo this week and probably winning, Penguins in danger of falling down into the relegation playoff spots again. So in that matchup, a win is just really important for both of them, and it'll be interesting to see who of the two can manage to do that.
Moving on to the last and final group in our lineup today, we are into 5B. And yeah, very nice score from Jack, really finding his form at the end of the season. In this one, and with a very nice score, over 20,000, the highest score in his division, actually. Going up against one of the lowest scorers, unfortunately for Neusel, his drop down into Division 5 has not been a happy one. But yeah, I think Sheldon, top of the table though, still managed to pull out a win there against Geoguessr, who also is not having a season he would be looking forward to. Nakiro.
Yes, indeed. Very impressive performance for Jax here. Best of all Division 5. As you mentioned, yeah, he got a bit of a rocky start of this season, but since the first week, it's been quite consistent, and his performance is very impressive considering that no one is above 25k, 28, 18, sorry, 18k. Yeah, apart from that, everyone is roughly at the same level. Some miss some round more than other. Unfortunate loss here from Joguer, indeed. That was actually pretty close. And I know, despite his loss against Danny Burns, would be happy to pick up a bonus point because it keep him safe from relegation from now.
Yeah, Calamity.
Yeah, definitely a fantastic performance from Jack there, and Sheldon just about managing to cling on to that win there against Joguer. Definitely a win that he needed. So he's cutting it really close there, but a win's a win, so he'll take those 3 points. Yeah, apart from that, as Nakiro mentioned, no, will take that 1 bonus point, very close as well, just 200 points essentially ahead of Paranoid Android, who didn't pick up a bonus point. Yeah, apart from that, I don't think there was anything too surprising there. Yeah, Danny Bronze, Biquet with the win there. Just all of those results kind of just create a bigger gap in the middle of the table.
Yeah, let's look at that table then. Exactly. And there was very little movement in this one as well. The middle of the field shuffling. But yeah, towards the top and the bottom, quite a big divide. Noisel slipping down over 3 points away from Digmir, which means going to be a really big struggle for him to climb out of those relegation playoff spots, but still be difficult to try to avoid. Nobody wants to be in those. Meanwhile, the top 3 don't change, keep things tight. But yeah, Sheldon, a 4-point advantage over second and 3 points over second and 4 points over third. Nakiro.
Sheldon looks pretty safe here indeed, and yeah, he still has to play the red carded players, so it's actually the same for Jake's here. So the top 3 looks actually more solid than it looks. Considering the performance of all the 3 players so far, I would say that I don't expect much changes. But there's definitely an interesting fight around the bottom of the table, considering that division 5 is pretty scary in that regard. That if you just slightly, if you do slightly less than average, you can still be out of the Reddit League. So there's a very strong issue here indeed in the next for the bottom player.
Yeah, Calamity very tight towards the bottom there, and a lot of people kind of playing to stay where they are if they're higher up and to not fall any further down. Though the chances of changing your kind of bracket might be about out of reach for most of them.
Yeah, and the interesting part about this is actually that the 3 weeks that we have left, the red card matchups are gonna be for the top 3. So all 3 of them will pick up an additional 3 points for free. I'm gonna say free a couple more times in all different variations. So there won't be any influence on their direct battle via those games, but at the same time, it leaves 1 less game for each of them to make a difference. Essentially, all 3 of them only have 2 more games to really make a change up there, and for Danny and Jack maybe catch up to Sheldon. But at the same time, it also gives them a bit more of a sort of a guarantee that they won't fall down further behind Biquet or no, for example. Whereas at the bottom, it's just all 1-against-1 against players that haven't been red carded for the rest of the season in those 3 weeks. And yeah, it's still relatively close there as well. Joguer and Paranoid still play each other in the week after the next one. So that's going to be an interesting game for sure as well. Noisel also still has a lot of games against players down there around that area. He still has to play Paranoid next week. So definitely some interesting games there still to come, and I think especially in the relegation fight, nothing's decided yet. Whereas in the promotion fight, not decided yet in terms of who'll get the automatic spot, but I think the top three will most likely at least stay this way.
Look at those matches on that world map that they have coming up. And as you mentioned, Calamity Noisel does take on Paranoid in this week. Geoguessr, though, has to take on Jack Nakiro.
Yes, not an easy matchup for sure, considering Jake's performance here, and they definitely need some points, but it's going to be tough. Other than that, yeah, Anono versus. Oh, I made a mistake. Okay. Yeah, Anono versus Biket is very important for their fight against relegation. Or if Biket managed to pick up a win, it could theoretically be in the playoff. But yeah, as we mentioned before, it's quite unlikely. Yeah, no, yeah. Other than that, yeah, I would say Mir versus Sheldon Wong, but I would definitely favor Sheldon here.
Yeah, Calamity, a lot of those matchups kind of upper table division players taking on lower, and then you're kind of like, well, those should go the way of the more favored player, but it is a hard world. You never know. Yeah, probably the most thing to work out is that French derby matchup, Arnaud Nova, to get both of them in the middle, their chance to either join the upper echelons or fall away with the rest.
Yeah, exactly. I think Anonono is too far behind for the promotion fight because he's already 4 points behind, and with the players in the promotion fight picking up 3 points anyway, it's kind of the same as being 7 points that you have to make up, and in just 3 weeks, that seems unlikely. So if anything, it's Biquet who still has a bit of a chance to make up that gap and potentially still be in that promotion fight. I also think he does have to win all of his games to have a chance, but he does then play Danny Blondes in the week after this with a finish against Neusel. So if he wins all three of those games, I think it's possible still, but not the most likely, perhaps. I think the other very interesting game, of course, is Neusel against Paranoid, because that essentially is, I'm going to say, probably it isn't even Paranoid's last chance. He has probably out of everyone the easiest finish to the season, but he definitely needs to start picking up points here, and he needs at least 2 wins out of those games. And the one against Neusel is a must win because he's the next player on that current, relegation playoff spot, the closest to a safe position essentially. So if he loses that game, I think he not only dooms himself, but he might also doom Geoguessr at the same time, because that brings Neusel almost out of reach, and then there is no one else that they could overtake. So that is definitely a must-win game for Paranoid.
So Geoguessr also rooting for Paranoid in that matchup. Well, that takes care of our regular matchups and divisions. Before we get to our map, we do have the Reddit League next competition going on. And yeah, with only 3 minutes in this one, Calamity, real quickly, this was not a fun week for a lot of them. 10,724 by Chris RS, the highest score in the group.
Yeah, not entirely unexpected. Aguston, actually, I checked at the deadline. He hadn't played. I checked an hour and a half later. He still hadn't played. That was when I imported all of the results. And then I checked at like 8 p.m. and then he had played, but that's unfortunately just too late. And therefore, he does not receive any points for this week. A bit of a shame. I think he actually would have had the highest score out of everyone here. Not by far. I think he had like 11 or 12K or something. But that would have essentially put him up to the top. So very, unfortunate for him there that he didn't play before the deadline. And that puts him back down in 5th place. But yeah, still very, very close together, everything. I'm actually surprised because usually if you just base a competition like this on score, then you'll eventually see gaps forming, gaps getting pretty big to the point where there's like 10,000, 15,000 points between every single person, and it's not that exciting anymore. But they're all very close together still, and just, a bit over 2,500 points, a bit under 2,500 points actually between the top three. So everything's still possible here.
Yeah, very nice. So keep an eye on that and look forward to see which one of these 6 players might be able to join us next season in Reddit League. Well, to wrap up, we've been talking about it all day. It is a hard world as our map, and which means we're on a world map again, which means it is hard to do a lot of practicing. But I mean, a player is definitely going to want to practice this one, Nakiro. It's the most difficult country as Geoguessr has to throw at us.
Yes, indeed. It's a very specific type of world map considering its limited number of countries. But as we mentioned, you could potentially train all those, but honestly, I think it's given the time you have, it's very unlikely. There are some small countries in the mix that doesn't really matter to train, like Bhutan or Israel. Considering that it's a world map, you won't drop many points there. Training from Russia of last week could potentially be beneficial if you got a very Russian seed. It doesn't happen to me in my training, but who knows? And honestly, yeah, I mostly expect people that are already good at those country to win, or those who train really in advance, considering some country like Cambodia or Indonesia or something.
Yeah, Calamity, one thing to mention that a hard world doesn't mean a rural world. I did get lots of cities in some practice games. So we could be in some very difficult cities, and just pinpointing or even figuring out what town you are in could be the hard aspect of the location.
It doesn't necessarily mean just that, but actually, my experience I had from playing through it was that it did feel sometimes like, while Alex says in his map description that the locations were like AI generated in those difficult countries, they felt like they were purposely difficult. So I'm not sure if that was just me having bad luck as always, but for me, they felt like they weren't just like, I wasn't getting capitals or anything in those difficult countries. Um, but Nakiro made a good point in that you're probably not going to have to practice the small countries too much because you're not going to drop too many points in them. And on a hard world, especially in the lower divisions, you can probably expect your opponent to lose a lot of points somewhere. So if you drop like, I don't know, 200 points in Bhutan, or I don't know, drop 500 points in Bangladesh, it's not going to be the biggest issue if you have, I don't know, a round in rural Brazil or a round in rural, I don't know, Nigeria, rural Australia, rural Russia. I don't actually know if Australia is in there. It should be.
I don't think so.
It definitely should
Maybe
be over
risk
some
it.
of
It
the
should
others.
be. Yeah, definitely not an easy country.
Yeah, there were definitely some people figured out which countries there are in there pretty quickly, and there were definitely some surprising ones where I thought, not quite sure why that one's in there. Like for example, I mean, Kyrgyzstan to me isn't a difficult country at all. I mean,
No.
some of the South American ones that are in there, I mean, Bolivia, Ecuador, I don't think personally are that difficult. Lesotho is in there, which you're also definitely not going to drop too many points in. Whereas on the other hand, yeah, as I said, Australia, I think New Zealand is a super difficult country actually, if you just limit to a couple of minutes, which I could definitely see being in there over a couple of others. But yeah, there's still plenty of difficult countries in there too. Actually, Israel, I think, as well, isn't too difficult, so not necessarily sure why that's in there, but Alec surely had his reasons. So yeah, overall, I think that probably narrows it down a bit. There's quite a few countries you probably won't have to practice, even if you could have the time to practice all of them. So if you just narrow down the few that you're bad at and practice those, that might already help you. And yeah, it might help you for the future as well. It's always good to become better at some of the more difficult countries. Probably wouldn't hurt anyone to be better at Indonesia, that's for sure. So yeah, I'm definitely interested to see how people will do on these maps, and we could see some interesting results for sure next week.
Definitely, indeed. So we'll get to test our country recognition, if not our pinpointing in this world map, given that these locations are not the friendliest. We could be anywhere from the middle of the desert in Mongolia to a strange, dense city with no signs anywhere in South America or Southeast Asia. So looking forward to definitely bringing you some of those matches. Those world maps are always fun to cast because we could be anywhere in the world. Well, thank you all for watching. It has been a blast covering these this week with you after after Russia. And definitely as we're getting towards the end of the season, things are really starting to heat up in those relegation and playoff matches. So you won't want to miss anything. So hit that like and subscribe button to make sure that you will be able to stay on top of all the events as they unfold in the coming weeks. And we will see you next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.